Hello, welcome to another video, and today we're going to be looking at plantar fasciitis and various exercises and strategies you can use to eliminate it and also prevent it. So the first thing that most people think of when they have this condition is to try and massage it, because it kind of hurts but feels good. So it kind of feels like it must be doing something, but like most foam rolling, massaging, stretching, it's really just a band-aid approach and just treating a symptom, not really the cause for it. Having said that, it's not like it's not useful to do what I'm doing here, which is just using a spiky ball to release the trigger points and the stiffness in the fascia itself. But like I said, it's not really addressing the reason for it. So, but it still can be a useful tool to use between some of the exercises that we'll go over as this goes on. So, pretty simple to do this. It's just a really sharp spiky ball, and I'm just massaging across the fascia. Sometimes I might use some mobility work on the calf itself, so just using some foam rolling, so I could just roll nice and gently across the calf itself, right across the back and also on the side. Sometimes the soleus on the side is really, which you can see what I'm doing here. That can get quite tight and and can impact some of the exercises that you want to complete. So meaning that you won't be able to execute them correctly. All right, so it can be useful, but I don't actually spend too much time here. Also, ankle mobilizing. So I've featured this before in videos about stiff ankles. This can be a useful drill, just getting the band to help stabilize the ankle itself by basically pulling the subtalar joint back into position, and then you're just rocking backward and forward into dorsiflexion. So it's more than just a calf stretch, it's kind of a stabilizing exercise as much as it is mobilizing. Again, if this is all I do, I'm not going to get very far. I'm just going to be forever doing these things, treating the pain, probably always waking up in the morning with sore heels and sore feet. All right, so that'll be sort of my first things, and then I might even include some hip stretches and stuff like that, because as you'll see, the hip becomes a big part of this. All right, so once I've sort of mobilized, I want to look at the stabilizing stuff. So this is where everything starts to come together. Okay, so now we're at the point where we're going to be looking at foot stability specifically. All right, now we are starting to treat the source of the problem. This exercise here, I'm just doing like a simple step through, but if you can see carefully, I'll just magnify this. I've got the band, a little tiny band around my big toe there, and I've just basically got it pulled towards the outside of my foot there. So basically pulling this way to try and give my toe a better position for it to be aligned. So that position there gives me a great arch in the foot, more stable foot, so that when I stand as if I'm going to be walking, I've got a really strong and stable foot. All right, so often these toes, they get stuck with gripping. And this gripping sensation, and what I'm doing there, I'm actually getting right onto the toe, which you'll see this is actually a big, it can be very painful for plantar fasciitis, but that point there, which is normal for a step through, especially if I'm running, I'd have to be able to do that. And to some extent when I'm walking as well, I'm just accentuating it here. But the toes, and I won't go too much into detail because this could go for like an hour, but there's videos, check the description below because I'll put links to the longer videos that I've done on this. But basically what I'm doing here is I'm just getting some big toe flexion and just trying to get that big toe to separate from the other toes, and then the other toes to separate from the big toe. So it's just toe disassociation, which is really important. That big toe is crucial for the foot being stable, and so I must be able to flex it like I was just doing then. If you have trouble, sometimes I'll use this little corkscrew type movement to try and drag that big toe position, like what I was using with the band a second ago, just using the floor to do so. All these exercises for the toes specifically, very, very useful in actually developing strength in the foot there. And as you'll see in a second, it becomes really important when you're trying to do the other exercises that are going to really effectively strengthen it and get rid of your problem. But you will have to spend a lot of time. There's a lot of other ones, like I said, I won't go into all of those now because I've done them many times before. I'll put them in the link below, in the description below, so you can check them out. But they're very tedious but very, very effective. All right, so now that I've sort of got some basic foot and toe drills going, now I want to try and put it into like more of a moving action where I'm incorporating more things. All right, so now we're sort of starting to get into the truly strengthening thing, the phase of things. So this is like the single leg calf raise, quite a simple exercise. Again, it can be quite painful trying to do this, but the pain will be quite necessary because the fascia itself has become so weak, and that's why the foot basically is either collapsing or it's stuck in a high arch. Either way, it's not going to be functioning very well. So with this exercise, I try to do as many as I can. So, really trying to get above 20, 25 reps if possible. Most people, when they first do this, lucky to get 10. But you really want, spend the time to build it up. I wouldn't do it every day. I do it maybe every 2 or 3 times a week. The foot drills, the toe drills that we did a second ago, I do them every day. But this one I wouldn't do more than probably 3 times a week. All right. So once I've got some calf raising strength going on, which is nothing too fancy, now I'm actually going to try to bring in to play more of the stabilizing into actual walking action. So this is where I'm using a balance beam here, and it's these little dome shaped things. Make sure that the feet have to spread out wide to fully stabilize the foot, and I can't have my foot turned out. I have to have it pointing straight, so that big toe has to be positioned just right in order for me to move. And the longer I can incorporate that single leg stance, the better this will be. All right, the longer I stay on this, the better this will be. That's why you'll see me really taking my time and walking backwards, and I'll put toes down first. And you can see how my feet are quite aligned, and hence I haven't fallen once yet, which normally you would expect to make quite a few mistakes on this. And you see how I'm just floating that leg around, trying to spend as much time as I can on there. Now this mat behind me, this little black mat here, this has got a ton of little spikes on it, like that spiky ball I used at the beginning. Plantar fasciitis people will find this extremely painful, just like the spiky ball, but it's better than the spiky ball because I actually can walk on it. So I'm actually encouraging my feet to stabilize, and I'm waking up all the nerve receptors under the foot to make them work and function better. Because remember, their problem is strength, not just stiffness. Stiffness is a protective thing. Now, with this balance beam, I'm basically now just bringing my center of gravity lower, so I'm actually incorporating more leg strength, but I'm actually really challenging the foot just as much as all the leg muscles. All right, so it's a great way to again get the feet to work now in combination with the hip to provide stability of the body. All right, and a very, very effective way to start developing that strength that you really have lost, and all the stiffness that's just creeping into your body. You can now start to get rid of it, and you'll see how I start to make a few mistakes after being on it for so long, and then really deliberately putting the legs in different positions to try and find it, and then walking backwards, going toe first. You see how I lose my balance there. And that's the great thing about this, that all the mistakes are actually quite useful, actually teaching the body what it's lacking, and how to recover and find its position to do it more effectively. All right, so a great drill, like if you don't have one, this is called a soulmate. If you don't have something like this, you could easily just use a rolled up towel, something that's like a beam of some kind, and just to challenge the stability in a big way. All right, so let's look at the next one that follows on from. Okay, so this next one, this is arguably a mobility exercise, but I kind of classify it as stability because what I'm doing to the big toe, I'm really challenging this foot to really stay stable as I step through with that right foot in the air. And where my big toes flex like that, this provides this is really effective for plantar. This has arguably been one of my favourite exercises for plantar fasciitis, just because of what it does to the foot when it's right there. It's a bit hard to see because I've got black socks on, but basically, like with my toe being flexed like that, it gives me that little arch straight away from flexing that big toe. And this person can really just learn how to stabilise that leg in the single leg stance, which is going to be the biggest thing that's going to change everything in terms of the strength and the function of the foot in line with the hip. So this drill here, very underrated, doesn't even really seem that hard, but what it does to changing everything is astounding. All right, so I would be trying to use this all the time between sets at the end of the day, so to try and prevent stiffness coming in again. Such an awesome exercise. All right, so now let's look at some of the more integrated strength exercises. Okay, so now we're starting to bring everything in together. So this is your typical Romanian deadlift. I'm just using a kettlebell here. The load's almost irrelevant in the beginning. Usually the person doesn't often do this exercise very well anyway, so I'm usually spending a fair bit of time teaching that person how to use their hips correctly. They sort of do everything as a squat. They just don't have enough strength through their glutes and the posterior chain, which always becomes a huge problem with anything in the lower limbs. All right, so I would start off by doing this, and it's probably where maybe I could use some hip stretching, some posterior hip sort of stuff to loosen it up if they can't get the technique right, but really spending a fair bit of time just to get really quite good on this exercise, because then it leads into the more difficult things with the single leg stance, which we'll go in a second. I could also start bringing in some simple strength drills for the hip. So this is just your crab walk. This is another really useful one that's, although it is quite simple, it actually is predicting some problems you're going to see in the single leg stance. So usually their feet will start to turn out if they don't have enough strength in the glutes, so they try to make things look good by turning the feet out too far. And also you can kind of spot when there's a real weakness in the glutes. They just can't actually open the band out like I am here. All right, so they're just finding any way they can to try and cheat on it because they just don't have the strength. And it'll kind of predicting what will happen when you put them in the single leg stance. All right, so this is why I would use these two exercises prior to the single leg stance. And the single leg stance is the most important because you start to see the issues with like what we saw in the balance beam, but they're even a bit greater because there's a lot of strength required. All right, so there's a little tool that I use to overcome that, and a bit like the black mat that I used before. I start to use which I could use that one again, but I'm just using a little red one here. And basically I'm just going to do a single leg deadlift on this red spiky mat. So the mat has got a ton of little spikes. So really getting into the nerve receptors of the feet there. And now I'm executing a single leg deadlift where it's known more of as a glute strengthening or posterior chain exercise. It's very much a big part of the foot. All right, so I can use this as a great way to start to engage the fascia to strengthen and absorb the shock of me placing my entire body weight through the foot so it doesn't collapse. So you could see from a side-on angle then what I was doing. Now I'm doing it front-on, and that gives you, as a coach or a trainer, you can kind of spot like what we spoke about before, that crab walk, where I might see things like the knee caving in, so knee valgus, or I'll see the foot turning out. They won't be able to get away with any of that on this now. They will just fall over if they do that. All right, so this really starts to build in that foot to control the pronation and really control the stability, which is exactly what I'm going to need on the walking phase. All right, so this is where you're really making some massive progress. All right, so all the things that we've done up to this are useful, but once I start getting into this area, I don't necessarily need the spiky mat. Spiky mat just enhances it a lot faster. You could do that yourself in the backyard, stand on some sticks and stones or something, or just even on rough ground, something that you can feel something under your feet is just as effective. Now the last phase I don't always do, but especially if you play sports, it's really important that you should be doing it. All right, so let's have a look at those. Okay, so this last phase is very much specific to sports. I wouldn't use this with everyday people, but one of the drills I would, but not necessarily this one. This one's a great exercise for knee stability as well, so for preventing ACL injuries in sports. So basically it's like the single leg thing, but I'm obviously jumping, and it's the landing. It's the landing that I've got to try to control. So I don't want my foot to lose control. You can see I kind of lose it a bit and then I regain it there where my foot was trying to turn out, and I lose it again. So I'm aware I'm doing it, and then I try to correct it and overcorrect it. But a great exercise to basically teach that foot to control, to be a shock absorber, because usually when it's got plantar fasciitis, it's not a good shock absorber at all. It's not absorbing any shock. All right, so then you basically you don't necessarily need a ladder like this. The ladder's handy. It sort of forces you to clear the rungs. And then you're just trying to land in that single leg stance, and the foot and the hip again working together, but you really don't have time. It's not load that's the problem. It's the speed of the movement. It's the instability of it, and you're basically just trying to overcome that. I do a better job with my foot, but kind of lose control of the hip a few times on this leg. And yeah, it can be a really useful drill. Again, I could use it with some people. It just depends on their ability. And often by this, if they're up this stage, they've pretty much got rid of it anyway. But this just ensures that it doesn't come back. This second drill here, which I usually use with some lines on the ground, but basically you just like the calf raise, but I'm just jumping side to side on a zigzag fashion for roughly 2 to 3 meters, and then when I get to the end I just jump backwards. I have to stay on the ball of my foot and try and control the sideways movement. It's a great exercise for, again, bringing in the calf, the ankle, the feet, even the hip to some degree, and it's a great way to just build some incredible strength to control the landings and the big toe, and that again working huge in this because it's flexed. All right, so there's a ton of exercises for plantar fasciitis. There's quite a few others I use at times, but these would probably be the main ones. And depending on the person, it's a mixture of quite a few of them. All right, so yeah, I hope you've enjoyed that video, and I'll see you on our next one.